best case scenario, parents and teachers are partners in trying to help kids reach their potential. And I think, when education is its most successful is when we partner really well to say, here's where our kids are, here's where we need them to be, and how can we bridge that together? That's when we're at our best.
Hello and welcome to the Disrupt the Everyday podcast. We're here to help you navigate life while disrupting the status quo. Our discussions cover a number of topics relevant to everyday life. We discuss everything from relationships to entrepreneurship. We also engage in some difficult but important conversations. And now, here are your hosts, Brian and Tanya Hamilton.
Welcome to this episode of the Disrupt the Everyday podcast. Today we're joined by Julie Hasson. Julie, thanks for joining us today.
I'm so happy to be with both of you.
Awesome. We're happy to be joined by you. Now, we're going to start off the same way we start off every show, and that's by asking, who is Julie Hasson?
It's always such a deep question, isn't it? Who am I? I'm a professor in the College of Education at Appalachian State University, which means I'm a teacher and a researcher. I'm the founder of the Chalk and Chances Project, an author, a speaker, but most importantly, I'm passionately curious, which informs probably everything I do.
Okay, so perfect. So let's actually start there. Let's talk about the Chalk and Chances project. What exactly is that?
It started as a research project. I left my job as a school principal in 2015. I spent about 25 years as a teacher and a school administrator, and I became a professor. And at that time, it seemed like all of my favorite teachers from my youth were retiring. So my first grade teacher, Mrs. Russell, retired right then. My high school English teacher, Mr. Rezaniti. And I had to pick, as a new professor, a research focus. And what I really wanted to know was, what did this handful of teachers who I clearly remembered, like out of all the probably 40, 50 teachers I had in K-12 school, what did this group of teachers do that made this lasting impact on my life? And so I set out to talk to anybody I could find, at farmers markets, flea markets, craft fairs, wherever I went, asking people, tell me about the teachers you remember, and trying to distill what these teachers say and do to make a lasting impact on their students. So after about 300 stories, now we're over 400, I started to analyze all of those stories and pull out some themes. And it turns out it's about the way our teachers made us feel in their class. And over again, people talked about feeling safe and seen and stretched in the classroom of their favorite teachers. And I could so relate to the stories they were telling me. And I have a friend who stayed a high school English teacher even after I left the classroom and the principalship, Laura Estes Willie. She's still teaching. And she said teachers could really use these stories right now. So it turned from a research project and just an article into a blog. And we had to name it something. So my now son-in-law, who was a marketing major, said, what did those teachers use to impact your life? And we decided it was a lot of chalk and a lot of chances.
I love it.
That became, yes, lots of chances. So that became the name of the blog. And we started to share the stories. And it just kind of took on a life of its own. It became a TED Talk, which was a very scary endeavor, but turned out to be a great experience. And now it will be a book. So it just keeps kind of growing from there.
Wow. So I want to talk about a few things. I want to talk about the TED Talk, but first I want to go back to just when I was prepping and I was on your website, and the one question, well, there's two questions in it. The first one is, who did you become because of a teacher? And I had to stop and be like, I don't know. I can't say I owe it to this specific teacher, but two come to mind. And one, Mrs. Devel, my kindergarten teacher, and I think it was grade 3, Mrs. McDonald. And I thought, why was it? And like you said, for sure, feeling comfortable in their classes and actually feeling more than just a teacher, but a little bit like almost love and affection as well, right? So
Yeah.
that was neat to sit back and ponder. And then I thought of like our kids' teachers, and they've all been so amazing. But last year, we did the online learning for quite some time. And just remembering to the twins, we put them in the same class because we had a feeling that there would be a lockdown. And I only wanted to deal with one grade 4 class instead of two. And their teacher, shout out Mrs. Mazareo, she is beyond exceptional and she's been teaching forever. But even just like the way she would talk to them, and as a teacher or as a parent, I actually got to hear because they were in their bedrooms and I could hear what she was saying, right? And just that connection, of back and forth conversation, you could tell like the kids felt so comfortable. It was not just the learning piece, but they could actually share some of their personal life, right? In that classroom setting. And I think that's so important.
Oh, Mrs. Mazareo, thank you. I'm telling you, the teachers during COVID really showed up. They pivoted. They had to turn on a dime and learn to teach remotely. And the stories that came out of that, the way she made your kids feel comfortable and safe and seen. And there were all of these stories about teachers, dropping off books at kids' houses or showing up in the driveway with a portable whiteboard,
Yep.
all kinds of things that I was already amazed by the work they do, but I think COVID really highlighted their dedication and their skill. And kids needed more than ever to feel safe and seen at that point. And I think our teachers really did that for them.
Yes, I totally agree. For sure.
And I love, Tanya, that you found that question, like, who did you become because of a teacher? And I think what you said was really important. Like, we're not here to save kids, and we can't say that we can isolate one teacher as the turning point in a student's life. What I think that what teachers do is give them the tools and the support they need to put themselves on their own positive trajectory and to realize the goals that they have for themselves. And for so many kids, it's a teacher who is that positive catalyst who helps them reach those goals.
And like the second one that's on there, right? Who will a young person become because of you? Wow, that's a question to make you stop and think. And that's for anybody. I do daycare, childcare. But it's like, when you're interacting with really any child, whether you're a parent, a teacher, educator in some facet, it's like the time that you spend with these kids, what is going to be their lasting impression, or what will we help them become, right? So
it's true. And the scary thing is, so much of what we teach them is not what we say, but it's our modeling. It's just deal with challenges and the way that we frame things in our own lives. They're always watching that. But the thing to me about what you do, Tanya, and what teachers do is when we're not their parents, the effort that we give them is sort of this discretionary effort. Like, we don't have to love them like parents do. And when an adult, especially an adult in some position of authority, puts discretionary effort into you, that's a powerful message that you're worthy of somebody's time and effort. And I think that's what you do, Tanya. That's what teachers do, is say, you're worthy of my attention and my presence and my time and my effort.
Yeah, and it's funny too, because as you're sharing all that, I thought of a couple of teachers. There's two in particular. One, and I'll preface by saying this is my second time through grade 2, but I had a teacher by the name of Mr. Williston, and I think he was the first teacher at this in particular school that I had who I didn't feel stupid when I was in his class. He actually made me feel like, he actually engaged me. I don't remember what he looked like, but I just remember, again, like you said, the way that I felt in that classroom. And he actually wrote children's songs too. So I still remember a lot of the songs that
he'll sing them to like the kids sometimes.
Yeah, the songs that he used to sing, going back to grade 2. And then in grade 4, I had switched schools, and I had my teacher in this class was Mr. Miklos. And he had a reputation for kind of being the more strict, the more hard teacher, but it was what I actually needed. And I definitely felt like I was stretched in that class. There were kids who left the classroom crying. There were kids who got sent to the office crying, but I like, for me, it was a matter of, I wanted to prove that I could actually do the work that was being given to me. And that was actually the first time I actually felt like I was actually able to understand what was going on in school. I actually started doing well. And I think I owe it a lot to just being in his class, because he was actually really, for me, the teacher that I needed at that time.
You have those high expectations for you, which are so important. And I really thought when I started this project, I'm going to hear about all this sweet, kind of warm, fuzzy things. But I don't hear about many teachers who don't also challenge people. It's like that combination of challenge plus support. So they don't challenge kids and then kind of leave them out there hanging. They challenge them, but it's a doable task, and they give them the support they need, but they push them, and maybe they cry a bit, Brian, some of those challenges. But that stretched part keeps coming out in my research. So there's something about the risks that are necessary for learning and growth, and how feeling safe and seen is sort of a prerequisite for being willing to take those risks that teachers give us.
And another piece on that, like, I'm just thinking for our kids, right? Sometimes when we're trying to stretch them, or in different situations, it's like, oh, hands up, I can't do it. I'm at home, it's the parents, and they don't want to do anything, right? But then I think too, it's nice for all kids to see that it's not just our parents expecting this from us, right? It's also nice that somebody else in authority is telling me, you can do this and you can learn this, and then you can, apply it to your life, right? So it's almost like that reassurance that it's not just the parents telling these children this, it's other people in their circle.
It's true. And, in best case scenario, parents and teachers are partners in trying to help kids reach their potential. And I think, when education is its most successful is when we partner really well to say, here's where our kids are, here's where we need them to be, and how can we bridge that together? That's when we're at our best.
So even, I guess, during COVID, I know I've heard a lot of parents say they feel like there is a sense of disconnect from them and the school, just because, like, you can't go into the school. They don't really want you waiting at the fence for the kids to come out. So there's so many parents that haven't even almost put a face to the name, especially the older children, right? JKSK, sure. So do you have any suggestions for parents to, yeah, I know there's the meet the teacher night. Sometimes, well, right now it's on Zoom if you are having it, but do you have any suggestions for parents to, just, I guess, make that connection with their teacher for this year?
I love, and I even do this. My kids are grown. My daughter is a teacher, but we have a community school, and just to reach out to the school and say, how can I support you? How can I help you? What do you need? Is such a refreshing, lovely thing for an educator to get. So there's no problem to solve, there's no issue, but how can I help you? How can I support you? And then in turn, I think, the educator will support and help the parents back. So if we can create that two-way communication about how can we best support each other, I think that's a beautiful thing. And we think that we have to be face to face to be connected, but I'm not sure that's necessarily true.
For sure.
Kids have those calendar planners and things that they take back and forth, and just a sweet note sometimes checking in back and forth is enough to have that connection. And always, I think, having conversations, although I know our kids aren't always willing to engage after school about how their day went or what they're learning, but finding ways to try to understand what they're working on and how we can support them, I think, is important too. I get really concerned right now, and I know we don't want to get into deep politics, but concerned about how teachers are perceived and sort of these notions that they're pushing agendas on kids. So I think teachers right now really need support and really need those kind words. For me, I'm in schools all the time. I don't see evidence of that. I see them working really hard to teach the standards and to stretch kids and get them where they need to go. But anything we can do to support them and encourage them, I think, is very welcome and appreciated right now.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. And I'm finding with our oldest in grade 7 now, and for him, he's, pretty great student academically. So there's never really that like, oh, he's struggling this way. So sometimes if there's like, behavioral or the academics are fine, you sometimes don't hear from anybody, right? Which is fine, because it's almost like, okay, this student is good, we're just gonna continue. But what I've done is just send out an email to the teacher every once in a while. Hey, just checking in. Just, is there anything I should be aware of or anything like that? Like, let me know, right? Just, here's the connection. I'm here if you need me. If not, we'll talk at a later date. But just finding as they get older, there's limited interaction. It's more the student and the teacher, which is fine. That's what they need to do. And not as much, agendas and things like that going home, because they're responsible for their work, right? So yeah, I found that's been working so far with all the different ages of the kids that we have.
Yeah, I think that's true. The older they get, probably the less connection we have.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm thinking like when mine were in high school, I remember doing things like just sending in some hand sanitizer or paper towels, or little things meant so much to those like middle school and high school teachers, because they don't get as much attention and support as we do when our kids are littler.
So again, you did mention earlier that you've done a TED Talk as well. Now, I'm just curious, you said it was a great experience. I've always wondered what that's like, because again, you have a really short time to give it's usually a pretty significant message. So I guess, can you walk us through that process, what it was like to really pack your message down into, a bite-sized really presentation, and, and being on that TED stage?
It was so challenging. I was a teacher, not a speaker at that time. And so I was used to giving a lecture with copious notes and PowerPoint slides and all of those things. So when I got a call from the TEDx Eustis crew, who are lovely and so supportive, they said, we prefer no slides and no notes, which made me a little nauseous for a while. And then I found, I have a mom who thinks you can learn anything, figure anything out with the right support and tools and coaching. So I found a great speaker coach, Jen Samuels Chance. I'll give a shout out to Coach Jen, who helped me take that kind of big octopus of a project and put it in a concise message, and try to integrate in some of the stories I collected, because really that's the heart of the project. And so it became a challenge, but a fun challenge. And for me, I get really anxious anyway. She said, you have to know that talk so well that it's like in your bones, so that you can respond to the audience and you can really be there and be present and not worrying about what you're going to say next. So I walked around our block, around and around and around with the headphones in, listening to that talk, and practiced it and practiced it and practiced it. So by the time I got to TEDx Eustis, it took a few months. I knew it inside and out, and I was ready to deliver it. And there was such a receptive, sweet crowd that made it a little easier. And I think you really bond with the other speakers at an event like that. And so that was a source of support too. But I loved that TEDx event. It was talking about stretched. They made me feel safe and seen, and it was definitely a stretching experience. And everything I think I do as a speaker now, I pull things from that experience.
And now all the stories that you kind of brought together for this project, for the talk, is there a specific story? Is there one? I'm sure there's a ton of them, but is there one that kind of sticks out as the one that's always kind of front of mind for you, as that really consolidates all of the topics, and really really is a great example of making a student feel safe, stretched, and seen?
It's funny. My husband laughs at me because every new one I get is my favorite. And I love them all, and they're all so different, and they all have different contexts and different grade levels, but at heart, they're all the same. I think the ones that happened early on probably mean the most, because that's when I thought there's something here. It was just trying out, asking people about their teachers, and those early ones that came sort of sent a signal to me that there was something there that I could dig into. And I met a man named John at a craft fair. It was one of the first places I went. He was a veteran, a firefighter, this really kind of tough older man. And he talked about his third grade teacher, Miss Andrews, and how she would bring him snacks and kind of take care of him. he had a dad who abused alcohol, and mom just wasn't capable of really taking care of him. So he felt really different than other kids at school, and he didn't feel as loved or as cared for, but this teacher made him feel loved. And one day she brought him some new school shirts because he, didn't have the cleanest, most nicely pressed shirts. And there was something about that gesture that he said was a real turning point in his life because it made him feel worthy of love. And he said from that point on, he made better decisions for himself and the people around him because he felt worthy. And then he became, a firefighter. And he said, the way I interact with the people that I encounter is different because she made me feel worthy. And he became the adopted father of 2 girls. And he said, the way I parent those girls is different because this teacher made me feel worthy of love. And I think if we can help kids who don't feel worthy feel a sense of worth, that's a really powerful thing. And so many of the stories have that point, of a teacher whose time and attention or these seemingly small gestures made them feel worthy. And it changed their trajectory. It changed the decisions that they made.
Now, in all the stories that you've heard as well, do all of them have all 3 components existent in it? So the safety, the seen, and the stretched, or are there ever situations where, maybe someone already feel they don't have an issue with safety, maybe, but being seen and stretched is still existent? I'm just curious if you encountered that at all.
I don't know that I always see all 3 evident because usually it's, when you ask people about a teacher they remember, almost always they tell you a story. And that story is one point in time. And so you don't always see all 3 in this story. But if I dig a little about that teacher, they will tell me about all 3 of those things. So it's rare that I'll hear about someone's favorite teacher or most impactful teacher that wasn't all 3. But I don't know that the stretched really can exist without the safe and the seen. Mm-hmm. There's something about creating an environment of safety that allows kids to take the risks they have to take to really learn and grow.
Yeah, I agree with that for sure. I'm just thinking like even with daycare, right? At the park, let's say, it's so neat to see a little 3-year-old start walking at our park. We have these like tree stumps that make this nice long path, right? And at first, what is it? Miss Tanya, can you hold my hand, right? And they go around it, me holding their hand, because that's how they feel safe. And then all of a sudden one day, it's just like when they're with their parents, they don't want help anymore, right? And that's because they feel secure and they're on their own. And even just that, they know they've tried it. They know that I've been there, their parents have been there. If worst case, they fall. And then there you go. They feel safe and comfortable, right? So it's just those little things that really, when you look back, it's like to see a little person, doesn't really matter the age, to almost grow into something new, the excitement on their face. I mean, like, come on, that's priceless.
Oh, I love that example, Tanya. And they change so fast when they're that age. But they know, Miss Tanya, if I fall, Miss Tanya is going to help me up.
Yeah.
There's a trust. So if we think about what safety is that feeling of trust. If I make a mistake, it's going to be okay. No one's going to laugh at me. Yeah. If I fall, Miss Tanya is going to help me up. Safety is all about a sense of trust and feeling safe from any kind of humiliation, shame, injury.
Mm-hmm. So obviously there's different aspects of even the schools that teachers teach in, right? Like I'm thinking of friends and family. I know somebody who teaches like at an elite private school, and then there's the schools that are in where the social economical situations obviously aren't the greatest, the family home life, the behaviors and all that kind of stuff, right? What can you speak or give wisdom and advice to a teacher in that school and then the teacher in the private elite school?
At heart, it's the same. So the safe, seen, and stretched in the stories I've collected have come from different contexts, different communities, different grade levels. but those themes still come out, which is interesting to me that you could be in a university. Sometimes I get stories about professors, grad programs, and what I'll hear about a first grade teacher in a high need school, the themes are kind of the same. The actions are different. The needs are different. And some of our kids have a lot to overcome and they need a lot from their teachers, but all of our students have something to overcome. And so we're always that bridge from where they are to where they can be. I'm the mom of a daughter who teaches at a really high need school. So that she teaches in Tampa in an urban community that has a lot of economic instability. And COVID was really tough in that community. She works super hard, but the things she does are so much like, the teachers in my community, which is very different. And just trying to understand where kids are and where they could be and put things in place to support them from getting from there to where they can be.
Mm-hmm. It's interesting too, because I guess when you think of it, even though you may have somebody who's in a low socioeconomical area and somebody who's at the elite school, but there's I guess in terms of being safe, just as an example, they can still have that need, but it's going to be different.
Right. It's going to look different.
Yeah. The context is different, but the needs are at heart, the needs are the same. They're just existing in a different context. So it may be a different kind of safety, and from one school to the next or from grade level to grade level, but there's still that same need. And I think it's the need, even if we think about us as adults in the workplace or other places we may belong, we still want to feel safe and seen and stretched. Even when I think about like my church community, that's really what I want and need from them too. So what's really surprised me is how much learning about all of these teachers changed me as a person, like as a mother, as a friend, as a spouse, as a teacher myself, that I could pull all of these things from these models that I've been hearing about and use that to try to make a bigger impact on all the people in my life.
Mm-hmm. So speaking of safe, seen, and stretched, can you speak to the parents in regards to continuing to implement this at home for all of our kids?
Yeah, I think at heart, it's the same. Okay. Although I think having been a teacher for a long time and also been a parent, it was easier to get very frustrated with my own kids who I parented than other people's kids. But I think it's the same thing. It's making them feel safe at home. Mm-hmm. So they can make a mistake. And part of safety, I've realized through these stories, is reliability, which is not just the follow through. Like it's not just doing what you say you're going to do, is also responding in an emotionally predictable way. So if I can predict how mom is probably going to respond to this, that's a feeling of safety. But if I'm living in a situation where things are sort of emotionally up and down and unpredictable, and Tanya, because you've worked with kids in trauma in different ways before, that's an unsettling, unsafe place to be. So if we can be that predictable, even though sometimes they think we're really boring, if we can be that predictable, safe, reliable space for them, then they can work out all of the things they need to work out and still feel safe.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, it makes sense. I was asking somebody just yesterday, like, how are their kids doing with settling into the fact that, parents are separated now in two homes. And, they said, actually, surprisingly, really, really well. Right. And I continue to say, what? Kids are so resilient, which we know that, but then that stability now is there. So yes, it's a new routine. There's two houses, all that kind of stuff, but they're stable and they now know the routine. When they're with mom, they know how things are going down. They know with dad, right? And that takes away so much the unknown, the maybe anxiety, the stress that even little kids are going to have regarding this, right? And then it's just almost continuing and figuring out life in the two homes. But yeah, interesting to see how it plays out for kids.
It's so true. And if we're okay, they're going to be okay. One of the things that I've taken so many things from this research, but one of the things I realized were was that the teachers who really made an impact on my life had this certain sense of ease and calm. Like they weren't all worked up and anxious all the time. They had this nice, calm sense of just sort of ease, and they were fully present. And I've really tried to develop that, to put aside some of that anxiety and hustle and get things done, to be that force of just presence and calm and ease, and bring that energy to my kids, to my students, to all the people I connect with, because that in itself makes an impact.
Yeah, exhibit A. So this morning was mayhem in this house. Like literally the kids are up and awake for like 52 minutes before they leave the house. And like there were so many meltdowns along the way. I'm upset and they're rushing. And it was like, okay, love you. Have a good day. Right. And then coming home, things were calm. Everything was good. And it's so, again, we all know this, right? But just the energy that they pick up when they walk into the house this afternoon, it was chill. I mean, there were a couple hiccups along the way, but nothing like this morning. And it's like, oh man, I got to check. It's as the parent, as the teacher, we got to check ourselves a little more and be like, okay, I got to settle, because as soon as I start to, then they follow in suit, right? We know
it's
this.
So true. We do
just
know,
hard
but
to follow sometimes.
It's so hard to do. But if I think about Mr. Resiniti, my high school English teacher, like one of the things I loved about him was just that chill. Now, on the inside, he may have been freaked out. I doubt it, but he may have been. But on the outside, there was just always this sense of ease. So I've been working really hard to try to bring that into whatever space I'm in. Just kind of a sense that, and I work with teachers. All of my students are teachers during the day. They're grad students at night. And they need me to come into their classroom, into their space with just a little bit of calm and ease. And we know that those emotions are contagious. So if we can do that in our classrooms, in our homes, in our spaces, that in itself is an impact.
For sure.
Yeah, absolutely. It's interesting because I do teach part-time as well at a couple of local colleges. And yeah, it's something that I wasn't really mindful of when I first started, because, I was fortunate to have the opportunity because of the industry I'm in and my experience there. But I had no idea what I was doing. Like, to be perfectly honest, the first semester I was just hoping every week that I didn't get fired. But that was, I think that those students I had in that first year, I'm still connected with a lot of them. We stay in touch. One of them's been on my other podcast to just talk about his experience in the industry and how, the impact I had as a teacher. And at the time, I had no idea. It wasn't until after he graduated where he told me, and I actually didn't think he even enjoyed my class. He was really quiet, but he said it made a huge impact, and that's a big part of why he's doing what he does today. So it's definitely not a career to be taken lightly. There is so much responsibility that you have. And just kind of speaking to what you spoke to earlier, it is frustrating to see the way sometimes the teachers are kind of perceived or portrayed in the media.
It's true. And Brian, and too, Tanya, it looks so easy. And we think because we sat in a classroom and we watch teachers teach that we know how to do it. And it's not until you try it that you realize how really difficult it is. My husband too, Brian, he was a CPA and an auditor, and 4 years ago became a professor. He's an accounting professor. And the first semester he came home and he said, Julie, sometimes they nod and you think they get it, and then they fail the test. And yes. It's true. Watching him learn to teach was so much fun for me, but you could see the work it took to become a proficient instructor, even in college, let alone with the little guys. I compare it to ice skating. Like when you watch ice skating on TV, it looks so easy. And then you strap on some skates and your ankles wobble and you realize how really hard it is.
Yeah. No, like you said, it's always easy to watch. It's always easy when someone else is doing it.
Yeah.
Especially a really great teacher. And I don't know that we can always define that, but we know it when we see it. Like, we know it when we're in the presence of a really great teacher, but to try to pull all of those pieces apart and understand what that is so complex.
No, for sure. So just going on that, I guess I'm going to ask your expertise here. So let's start with speaking to a teacher who this is their first year. What words of encouragement would you share with them?
I would say no one does it well their first year. You know, I think we would all, it's kind of like, Tanya, because you have 4 kids and you kind of wish you had one that you could just try it all out on before you have a real one. I think teaching is that way too. We all want to do over our first year. But as long as you love the kids, try to respond to their needs, they'll be fine. You'll be fine. I promise. My daughter's in year 3 now. Her first year, the pandemic started, and we went to remote at the end of the year. And she's never had a non-pandemic year, which I think is really interesting in year 3. But you roll with it and you learn to adjust. And we know that in year 1 through 5, the trajectory of effectiveness is steep. So there's a huge learning curve. And then once you hit year 5, you start to get into a stride. So my advice is hang in there. It won't get easier, but you'll get better.
There you go. It won't get easier, but you will get better. And then words of encouragement to a teacher who maybe has around a couple years left to go before retirement and really potentially could be counting down those days. What words of encouragement do you have for them?
Oh, and those are the people I think this project is most for, because once you spent all of those years invested in teaching, I think you start to wonder, did it matter? Did it make a difference? And we're terrible as former students about reconnecting with our teachers and telling them what a difference they made in our lives. I think we all get busy and we don't think to do that. So I hope the stories I put out give those teachers evidence of how much their work matters. Because the story you read may not be about you, but there's a student somewhere who would tell a story like that about you. So I think my message for them is that work did matter. It does matter more than you could ever imagine. And things that you probably don't even remember, small moments in a classroom, are things that a student still carries and remembers very clearly.
Perfect. Thank you for that. So just in wrapping up, I know we've talked about feeling safe, seen, and stretched in the classroom, but the book, so is it out yet?
It is out this month.
Okay. That's what I thought.
It's available for pre-order, Safe, Seen, and Stretched in the Classroom. And it's a combination of the stories I've collected, and then we've unpacked those stories to say, what does this mean? So what could we all take from this story to use as a model in our own lives? And then in addition to those strategies, pulling in some of the other research around that. So what does the scholarship say about trust and how we build trust? So it's got all of those components. I hope the stories are inspirational, but I hope the other pieces are informational and give people, whether they're teachers or parents or anyone who's trying to make an impact, some strategies that they can implement.
Okay. Yeah. And I was going to ask, who's this book for? Is it just for teachers? But you clarified that. So
yeah. And I think teachers are probably the predominant audience.
For sure.
But I've tested it on a few others in my circle who are pastors, who lead churches, who are parents and trying to grow kids. And they've said, these strategies apply. I still have to make the people that I love and lead feel safe and seen and stretched.
Well, this has been such a great conversation. And yes, you through the camera and the screen, you just exude calmness and peace and all that. So it's a nice way to sort of end the evening. Oh, thank you.
Don't let your kids tell you otherwise, Tanya.
I was going to say, you know what? Now I'm going to go and I'm going to be like, it's bedtime. Because, bedtime can be some of the craziest times of the day, right?
I know. I remember.
Oh man. So one other thing, Julie, where can we find you online? And you talked about the book and that's what you're up to, getting that out this month. But if you're doing anything else, please share.
The best place to find me is chalkandchances.com, spelled out. The stories are there. I add a new one every Friday. So I'm still collecting those teacher stories. There's a place where you can share your story. if you have a special teacher you want to remember and have included on the website. But that's really the best place. And then everything is linked through that Chalk and Chance's website.
Okay, well, thank you so much, Julie, for taking the time to chat with us today.
Thanks, Tonya and Brian. Have a great night.
Thanks for listening to the Disrupt the Everyday podcast. For more ways to listen, connect with us on social media. To be a guest or to partner with us, check out our link tree at Disrupt the Everyday. Join us next time for more ways to disrupt the everyday.